would be maybe the smartest approach for many of my former colleagues to take right now. And I think people really need to digest just how bad this result is. I was listening to some people talk about it overnight, former colleagues, and it was almost like they were talking about difficult local council results. This is a profound result that goes to the heart of a choice on strategy facing the Conservative Party. And if it gets that choice wrong and fails to get back to the mainstream, then it faces potentially a very bleak future as it tries to battle with a different political party called Reform that has run against the party, just like Labour's run against the party, just like the Lib Dems have. And so I think now, in terms of who takes the party forward, there's almost this more profound question of what's the point of the Conservative Party? What does it want to try and achieve? Can it find some unity on that sense of purpose? Because actually, until it's really resolved that, it's very hard to know which is the best placed person to take the party forward.
And how is it that, Conservative Home is a good place to take the temperature? I mean, what's the chat about Nigel Farage?
So it's going to be, we are running a special survey over the weekend, which we'll bring out. But it's going to be really interesting to see, because before this campaign, when we did our last month's survey, a majority of members that we surveyed favoured offering him the whip if he were returned to Parliament. But they didn't favour focusing the election campaign on reform, because the bigger threat was Labour and the Liberal Democrats. But what we've seen over this last 6 weeks is that reform has really toxified itself with a lot of Conservatives. A month ago, I would have said that actually the really big cleavage in this leadership election will be, what do we do about Nigel Farage? But now, with the exception of Suella Braverman, every leadership candidate is going, no, we're not going to touch him. So it'll be interesting to see whether that's had an impact on Conservative members as well.
Yeah, fascinating. OK, well, really great to hear your perspectives on all of the many challenges awaiting the Conservatives. We'll keep a close eye on Buckingham Palace, but we think we may have a period of calm for a few moments. So we'll take a short break and come back with the best pictures and the best moments for you. Don't go away.
One, two, three.
New Nivea Q10 Targeted Wrinkle Filler Serum with pure Q10 and bioxyphil peptides. Fine lines appear reduced after 5 minutes. For every expression of you. Nivea. Nivea Q10 Targeted Wrinkle Filler Serum results in 5 minutes or your money back.
Thousands of top UK brands pay us when you shop, and we share that cash with you. So, thinking of shopping online? Top cash back.
The auto sale is now on. Get great offers on phones, tablets, smartwatches and SIMs. Plus, roam freely in the EU, up to 25 gig. O2, see what you can do.
Take a walk on the wild side at Edinburgh Zoo. From charming penguins to majestic giraffes, plus Scotland's only sloths and koalas, there's something for the whole pride to explore. Roar into action and learn how you can create a world where nature is protected, valued and loved. Waddle this way and visit Edinburgh Zoo for an adventure you won't forget.
To own a home at Kingdom Park is to experience a whole new way of living, where there's a real sense of a community, surrounded by natural beauty, and where there's a place for every occasion. Discover luxury holiday home ownership, less than 1 hour from Glasgow and Edinburgh, and find a home for every budget and every lifestyle. We look forward to welcoming you. Kingdom Park Homes. Your kingdom awaits you.
What happens when you lock up a Celtic fan with a Rangers fan on the day of the big match? Fireworks, that's what. Singing I'm No a Billy, He's a Tim and singing I'm No a Billy, She's a Tim are heading to the Edinburgh International Conference Centre from 31st of July to 25th of August 2024. Then to the Glasgow Pavilion Theatre, May 2025 and October 2025. Book your tickets now at scottkyle.co.uk.
At Art Windows and Doors, we believe that quality should come as standard. And that's not just for our excellent range of windows and doors, but for our service and price too. With over 9 out of 10 on Check a Trade, our quality, price and service speak for themselves. Visit us online or at our showrooms in Glasgow and Paisley. And don't forget to ask for your Central Scotland discount.
Oh, this is an important goal for Scotland. Yes! Oh, what a save. Let's see that again. Swapping the hose out for a watering can saves almost 1,000 litres an hour. Saving water, always an important goal for Scotland.
Welcome back to ITV's continuing coverage of the handover of power in the UK. Rishi Sunak is currently meeting the King after a disastrous night for the Conservative Party. Speaking in Downing Street just a few moments ago, he said that he would stand down as leader, but not immediately. He said, "I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility. I am sorry," he said. Geraint Vincent now on an historic night and what has been a pretty eventful morning so far.
The rain this time stayed away from Downing Street for Rishi Sunak's last speech as Prime Minister, and he arrived at the lectern, a penitent man.
To the country, I would like to say first and foremost, I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
The democratic dismissal of his government was a brutal business. Ministers in that government, an education secretary and a defence secretary who had majorities in the thousands and thousands, suddenly were no longer even MPs. The ex-leader of the Commons and the ex-MP for Portsmouth North was among the first to offer a reason for it.
Tonight, the Conservative Party has taken a battering because it failed to honour the trust that people had placed in it.
Conservative humiliation was completed in southwest Norfolk after dawn had broken, where a former Prime Minister stood at the edge of the stage as the loss of her seat to Labour was officially confirmed.
Thank you.
Liz Truss left her count after declining to give a loser's speech.
We did it!
A very different mood at an art gallery in London at 5 a.m, where Labour leaders past and present started to celebrate their spectacular win.
This is what it is for. A changed Labour Party, ready to serve our country, ready to restore Britain to the service of working people.
The size of Labour's win was increased by the presence of a new force in British politics. Reform UK ate into the Tory vote in so many constituencies. Clacton was one of them.
Nigel Paul Farage is duly elected as the Member of Parliament for the Clacton constituency. Congratulations.
It's not just disappointment with the Conservative Party. There is a massive gap on the centre-right of British politics, and my job is to fill it. And that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Now then, what sort of night did the Liberal Democrats have? Well, here is their leader at around 4:45 this morning, taking dad dancing to a whole new level.
You have helped us get our best results for over 100 years.
North of the border, they weren't electing a new Scottish government, of course, but the governing party there suffered loss after loss at the hands of a resurgent Labour Party in what was a terrible night for the SNP.
We need to learn some hard lessons from tonight, and I'm committed to doing exactly that.
There were some bumps and breaks in Labour's landslide.
This is for the people of Gaza.
They lost 3 seats to independent candidates protesting against Labour's position on the war in Gaza, and 1 to the Greens, who now have 4 MPs. This was indeed a change election, but as well as the government, it is the political landscape of the UK, which is very different now. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Indeed it is, and who better to talk to before we allow him to go and get some sleep than Professor Colin Rallings, our election analyst, who's helped chart us through this new landscape overnight. Just give us your departing thoughts.
It was an extraordinary night, really, from the moment the exit poll dropped. And the exit poll did pretty well again, I think it's worth saying. But this was the worst result for the Conservative Party in history, and I think you cannot take that away from it. Labour did very well. They've got a huge majority of seats. They didn't do spectacularly well in terms of share of the vote. Little up, really, on what happened in 2019. So you look outside the two main parties. It's the lowest share of the vote that the two main parties have ever got in an election. You know, there are historical comparisons to be made all down the line. Liberal Democrats, 12% of the vote, 70 seats. Reform, 14% of the vote, 4 seats. That's one of the things that's going to be talked about. I think people ask about the British electoral system, whether it's fit for purpose. This always happens. But it was quite interesting that one of the Labour spokespeople just before the election, when the results were coming out, said, I used to be in favour of electoral reform, now I'm not so sure. Well, after these results, you can hardly expect otherwise, can you?
There'll be a lot of discussions about all of that, and you've taken us through it with such flair and expertise as ever, Colin. We will let you go and get some rest. Thank you very much
Julie.
indeed
very good
for
to
all
see you
of
as
your
always.
really
Thank
great
you.
to see you here. I feel very lucky that we kept you on well into day 2. We're going to take a chat with Shihab Khan now, who joins us from Westminster. Hi, Shihab. I believe you have some info for us on plans for what will happen with the Conservative leadership race. Word from Sir Graham Brady, I believe.
Yeah, I had a brief conversation with the former chair of the 1922 where we discussed what the next steps could potentially be. Rishi Sunak has said that he wants to stay in place as leader of the party until arrangements are made. But how exactly will those arrangements be made? Well, ultimately, it is up to the 1922 committee. That's a powerful group of Conservative backbenchers who sit here in Westminster that often make these decisions. The problem is, we're in new territory here. I'm told that essentially what happens is there is a committee, and those who are members of the committee, if they've been re-elected, they automatically get that place back again, and they will make those big decisions. I've been speaking to those members. There's not many of them left. That's the problem here. Now, I understand that at the moment, one of the preferences is to elect a new chair of the 1922 as quickly as possible. For that to happen, one of the Conservative backbenchers will have to put themselves forward. They need to be proposed by an MP, and they need to have a seconder. So 2 MPs need to endorse them, and then all Conservative MPs will vote. But there are restrictions, and this is what makes it slightly tricky. Anyone who puts themselves forward, if they are elected, they are not allowed to stand as leader. They're also not allowed to serve in any potential shadow cabinet, so that limits the pool ever so slightly. Once there is a leader in place for that 1922, once a chairman is in place, then the timetable will be outlined for how exactly this is going to work in terms of a leadership race. I've been talking to candidates, I've been talking to MPs, I've been talking to ex-MPs throughout the course of last night and this morning, and there is a range of views about how this should be. There are some who think we should take stock as a Conservative Party. That's what they tell me. They want to take stock. They want to think about what's happened before anyone puts themselves forward. Others are saying they need to act quickly to make sure that they can hold Keir Starmer, who will be the Prime Minister, to account. Without a leader in place, if this goes on for quite some time, Rishi Sunak, if he has to carry on, he will have to do Prime Minister's questions. And that will be quite a moment to have a former Prime Minister sitting on the opposition benches asking the new Prime Minister questions. At the moment, we don't know for sure how long this is going to take, but there is a lot of logistical things that have to be sorted out in the interim before any sort of decision can be made.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, we may have, what, a couple more weeks with Westminster. We'll have all those new MPs being sworn in next week. We've got a NATO summit. I mean, there is actually quite a packed schedule. Whilst this, you know, it's not background noise, is it? It's actually a really important, you know, sort of feature of our democracy that there is an opposition to the incoming government. There's a lot of stuff going on all at once, and a lot of new MPs about to arrive in the place behind you, Shihab.
Absolutely. And look, I was here in 2019 when there was an influx of new MPs. MPs aren't really told how to do their job when they get here. There's not really a manual that you can read. You come here for your first day, and for a lot of people, you learn it as you go along. And when you've got such major things happening, like that NATO summit, when there's a cost of living crisis, when there's big policy decisions to be made, what you need is an effective opposition. Now, those at CCHQ that I've been talking to say that Rishi Sunak has made it clear he's willing to stay on to try and make that process as quick as possible. The transition of power in the United Kingdom is a very, very quick thing, unlike in other countries like the US, where there is a bit of time for this to happen. Here it happens so unbelievably quickly. Sunak is saying that he's willing to stay on, but it is quite a big thing for a former Prime Minister to stay on as the leader of the opposition. It's not something we see very often. The 1922 will need to get their act together very quickly if they want a leader of the opposition in place. The other big question is, how does the party decide what direction they go in? There's a lot of debate about whether they shift to the right and they take on the fight from reform, or they stay in the middle. So we will have to wait and see what direction the party want to go in first.
Thank you very much, Shihab. We've just moved to the shots from the palace of a Range Rover leaving Buckingham Palace. We're not entirely sure who we are seeing on the move there. Chris Shipp may be able to tell us. Can we... Oh, Chris Shipp's not there at the moment, unfortunately. We do know that these are the moments that Rishi Sunak is meeting the King. Is Chris Shipp there? I'm just waiting to hear from my lovely colleagues. Chris,
yeah, hi,
can
Julie,
you just
how
tell
are
us
you?
what we were Hi. What were we just seeing there? Can you take us through it? Sorry about the confusion.
Not at all. I think what we were just seeing was Rishi Sunak leaving after his audience with the King. You know, I told you earlier that he goes out the sort of garden entrance. I thought that meant that he would use one of the exits, which you can use, as you know, Julie, it's a very big garden at Buckingham Palace, and go out one of the other exits, maybe over by Victoria Station. But it looks like he just came through there and went up Constitution Hill. So we don't ever get camera shots of him, as we were explaining earlier. That preserves a bit of the dignity of the outgoing Prime Minister. If you remember at Balmoral, when Boris Johnson handed over to Liz Truss, we didn't see him exit Balmoral, we just saw him arrive. So that's the kind of thing we think's just happened. Rishi Sunak leaving Buckingham Palace, having said to the King, I have now resigned, please can you call for the leader of the Labour Party, who now has the largest number of MPs, and that process will now get underway. What it actually means, Julie, is this very period at the moment, as I was saying to you earlier, it's a period when there is no Prime Minister, effectively. The King always should have a Prime Minister, but right now, certain executive powers rest over there. It's like being back in the 1600s, but we wait for Keir Starmer to arrive, we think, just before midday.
Yes, and we'll just stay with you, Chris, because that is the point. I mean, we've seen Keir Starmer on the most public of platforms in the last 6 weeks in the very sort of great intensity of an election campaign. But this is absolutely the moment, isn't it? I mean, just to imagine for anybody pulling up at the gates of the palace, knowing this is the point that you are appointed Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, where your life shifts in a way that is, for most of us, just frankly unimaginable. You are moving from being that, you know, private citizen into a role that shapes your entire family's life from this point forward, however long you're in office.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Leader of Scotland, was talking about this last night, about that moment when you assume power. For her, it was going into Bute House in Edinburgh, and for a Prime Minister, it's that moment when the King says to you, can you command the confidence of the House of Commons? Can you form a new administration? Can you be the third Prime Minister of my reign? And that is a very big moment for Keir Starmer. This all happens before he makes his big speech in Downing Street, a very important moment. And if he so wishes, he gets time to prep for that inside Buckingham Palace if he wants to make any last-minute changes, and his wife Lady Starmer will be with him. But that moment when the King asked the Prime Minister to form the new government happens alone, just the two of them in that room, no advisors, nobody else, and that's the moment when it's recorded in the court circular, Julie, as the kissing of the hands. That's just a reference to the type of meeting it is. They don't really do the kissing of hands anymore, but they do bow to the King, and at that moment Rishi Sunak will be the new Prime Minister of this country. Right now, though, there isn't one.
Chris, for the moment, we'll be back to you later. Thank you very much indeed for that. I'm staying in the studio chatting to Dan alongside me, who's been watching these events unfold. I mean, it's so frustrating when there's so much behind closed doors at this moment. We're looking at doors, waiting for people to come out, waiting for people to emerge.
You're very good at spotting the cards. I don't know what you're looking at most of the time, so well done.
Thank you very much indeed for that. And before we get chatting, thanks for that, Dan. Just before we get chatting, we've had quite a lot, actually, we should touch on. And this is one of the features for an incoming Prime Minister. We've had messages from world leaders leaders. I think the first out of the traps, actually, was President Zelensky. Congratulated Sir Keir Starmer and his country, and the UK would continue to be reliable allies through thick and thin. He also made sure to thank Rishi Sunak. We've heard from Justin Trudeau congratulating Starmer on a historic victory. Lots of work ahead to build a more progressive and fair future for people on both sides of the Atlantic. Let's get to it, my friend. Nothing from the US as yet, as you wouldn't expect at this hour of the day. But actually, it's worth sort of thinking about that for the moment. You know, we are also contemplating a White House as we have an incoming new Prime Minister where it's not entirely clear whether the incumbent is going to stand in the next election, only a few months away.
The domestic challenges for Keir Starmer are going to pile up very quickly. But it's important to notice as well, the international stage is going to be a real challenge of him in the coming months. We potentially have a right-wing government in France, and there's a lot of talk about the Starmer government working with France over the boats issue, over migrant crossings. We know he's going to scrap the Rwanda plan, and Labour have placed a lot of weight on that relationship with the French government. That government may be about to change quite considerably. And then you have the prospect later in the year of a Trump presidency. By the end of this year, you have a left-of-centre government in the UK trying to deal with its two biggest allies, really, France and the US. Very, very different political makeup. And I think the difficulty for Starmer will be, and there's been a lot of echoes and a lot of comparisons to 1997 and Tony Blair and the international stage that he inherited and the landscape he inherited. Very, very different for Keir Starmer. He's dealing with very tricky characters here, especially in France, where the challenges are so close, so on our border, and are so linked to promises that they've made over reducing migrant numbers.
OK. We're just hearing, I think, from my colleagues in the gallery that we're just reading and learning that Rishi Sunak has officially resigned. There is that moment when he has met the monarch, and as Chris Shipp was outlining to us there is that moment where we are now effectively in that period without a Prime Minister until Sir Keir Starmer puts it up to Buckingham Palace. We're keeping a close eye there. We're going to take a short break and we won't miss any of those images of Sir Keir Starmer.
Stop! Sure you want to lick the creamy yoghurt from every last inch of lid, but you can't. What will the kids think? Perhaps they'll draw pictures of me and show their parents.
Muller, love every bit.
Sleep well with Emma, so tomorrow you can conquer the day. Emma Sleep Products, designed to awaken your best.
If this is how we craft the details, imagine how it feels to drive the Mazda CX-30, our compact SUV. To experience this for yourself, search Mazda CX-30. Mazda, crafted in Japan.
Now? Think you know Blackpool? Well, think again. Let me illuminate you. We're giving you bird's eye views. I don't really like heights. Fish eye views. Tranquil views. When you've got all this in just one place, it's a 10. You can have your chips and eat them too.
Can I have your autograph, please?
Do you see a thumb? Only in Blackpool. Well, I thought that went well.
When you're setting up a new nest, starting your own flock, or they just keep on growing. Get the flexibility you need with VeryPay. Pay now, pay later, or pay over 3 months and pay no interest. We'll even send you helpful payment reminders. Shop the online store for fashion, home and more. VeryPay. Ways to pay that work your way.
Got opinions? Great. We want to know what Scotland thinks. Join Scott Pulse to complete short surveys, have your say and win cash prizes.
This summer, step aboard Waverley, the world's last seagoing paddle steamer for a truly unique journey. Enjoy a nostalgic cruise from the heart of Glasgow, or join at one of the many ports of call around the beautiful Clyde coast. See the engine turn, hear the beat of the paddles, relax on deck or in one of the comfortable lounges. Full catering facilities are available throughout your cruise, and make sure to visit the shop for an exclusive souvenir. Book online today.
If you're looking for a new kitchen in Glasgow, you may well rely on an international company. You might well pay a visit to a national company. But with free installation and our pay in full when the job's done promise, you should perhaps consider a local kitchen company and make Clyde Kitchens your preferred choice. Find out why your next kitchen should be a Clyde Kitchen. Visit clydekitchens.co.uk.
Supermarket shoppers of Britain, summer is here. And with Lidl, you can be super ready for a summer with the Supermarket of the Year, where you can make an epic saving of over 30% on this barbecue shop compared to Sainsbury's. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage. In the next half an hour, we're expecting to see Sir Keir Starmer arrive at Buckingham Palace for his meeting with the King, where he will ask Sir Keir Starmer to form a new government. After that, he'll head to his new home at Downing Street. The result this morning has reshaped so much of the political landscape. And across the country, voters woke up to a changed Britain. Our North of England reporter, Kelly Foran, is at Bury Market in the Bury North constituency. We can just have a look at that result before we hear from Kelly. A Labour gain by MP James Frith, almost 7,000 more than Conservatives, who saw a 20% fall in their share of the vote. Reform picking up 7,000 votes. Kelly, over to you for what people are saying there as they wake up to a new reality, both in Bury and across the nation.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, at the last general election, this was the most marginal seat in the entire country. The Conservatives won back then with a majority of just 105. But things here looked very different overnight. Labour are back here now. And at Harry Muffins this morning to you, Joanne, there's actually a picture on the wall of you and David Cameron. And I have to say, this isn't here for our sake. It's been here for years. How do you feel that there is now change here?
In Bury, I'm a bit sad for James Daly. He did a lot for Bury Market, he did a lot for Gig Lane. I've not really seen much James Frith, so I'm looking forward to speaking to him and see what he's got planned for the market.
If you do speak to him, what would you be saying? What would you like to see change?
I don't want any change for Bury Market. We're getting a new roof at the end of the year, which we're really, really thankful for. You can see how busy the market is, and we don't want any changes, really. It's the busiest we've ever been at the moment.
So do you feel a bit disappointed that Labour are back in?
No, I think the whole country was expecting a fresh change. I think there's been the last few years have been really difficult for Conservatives. I think Rishi's done the best he could give. Did like him, but there was just too many things going wrong, and I think Keir deserves a chance. And yeah, a bit optimistic, but future's bright, hopefully.
A bit optimistic, I think, is putting it kindly, isn't it? We'll let you get back to your customers, as you say, is busy. Thank you. Tony, you've had a stall here. It's been in the family since
1865.
Yeah, so as a small business owner, how do you feel today that there's this change?
I don't think there will be a change actually on the ground. Everybody says they'll change, but I've been voting that long that there's never a change. Somebody comes in, puts right what the last government did, and there's another change. I think it's time for a big change and proportional representation. Then there'd be horse trading, and I think the country would move forward that way.
We just heard a few moments ago that Rishi Sunak has now officially resigned. How do you feel about that today?
I think he was a great Chancellor, and in the words of somebody on Question Time the other night, very mediocre Prime Minister. So it's just a new face and a new seat.
How do you feel that Labour are back in Bury North?
I don't think it'll make any difference. I really don't. As I say, I think the two political parties are so adverse to each other that things never change. They just put right what the last ones did, never get a chance to put in their own new views, and it just never changes. I've been voting since I was 18 and I've never seen any great change.
What would you want to see if you could ask them for, you know, one change? As a small business owner here on Bury Market, you've been here for decades. What would you want to see change?
Well, our customers are mostly pensioners, and they see things like a living minimum wage of 22,000, yet they're expected to live on half that and survive. I think addressing what people are asking for would help, and the NHS.
Which part of the NHS for you?
All of it, from arriving to A&E to leaving, hopefully a few days later. All of it needs addressing.
And you've mentioned the voting system a few times, and we chatted off air about that. What are your thoughts on how it represents what people here in Bury have voted for?
Well, I think they're the same as what I've seen on TV this morning. I think Labour got in with a massive majority, with only a 2% rise in the actual vote. If there was proportional representation, every party would have some seats, and it would make her a lot fairer. But a bit like the continent, a lot of horse trading, people having to put in things they didn't like.
OK, thank you so much. It's
You're welcome.
a busy day here at Bury Market, as always, so we'll let you get back to your black pudding store. Thank you very much. Having chatted to people here this morning, to say that they are cautiously optimistic, I'm not so sure that they are for change.
Kelly, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's recap on the statistics of the night and see how many seats the parties have ended up with so far. Just a handful of seats yet to declare. Labour are on 412. The Conservatives lost 250 seats. They stand on 121. The Liberal Democrats have 71. Reform picked up 4 seats. The Greens are also on 4, while the SNP have just 9 seats. It's also worth mentioning that turnout was heavily down, around 60%. As we wait to see Sir Keir Starmer arrive at Buckingham Palace, it's a little way away now, we believe, as the rain starts to fall. Those brollies are up. I'm joined in the studio by Baroness Shami Chakrabarti, Labour peer, and Paul Novak of the TUC. 2 key voices to hear from at this juncture, really. Thank you both for joining us. Shami Chakrabarti, just your thoughts on this, I mean, historic achievement for Labour.
So, well, you've said it. It's historic. It's incredibly positive, and I can't but feel relief and positivity. However, this opportunity, and it is an enormous opportunity, is also a responsibility. And there are things to consider now, you know, when the party is over, and the party should quickly be over, because now there's a government to run and a country in dire need of attention. I'm concerned about turnout, the relatively low turnout in so many parts of the country. I'm obviously concerned about the rise of reform and some of the chilling words that came from that great shapeshifter in British politics, Nigel Farage. So I think there's
he helped Labour get in, didn't he?
Well, I mean, this is what I'm concerned about. I mean, yes, he and his party did take a lot of votes at this election from the Conservatives, but as he said, I'm coming for you next, and what he does, and whether it's the Reform Party or the previous versions of Farageist politics in Britain, what he does is sow the seeds of division and hate, really, which and when people are feeling alienated and unrepresented and left behind and unheard, he is the Pied Piper who is there to capitalise on that. And so, you know, I'm sure there'll be no complacency this morning in what will emerge as the Labour cabinet. So I think there's got to be, yes, of course, positivity, gratitude for people's votes, but also some real sobriety going forward.
I'll come to you in a moment, Paul, but I mean, it's worth noting for those who may not remember, you were the Shadow Attorney General under Jeremy Corbyn, very closely aligned to him. You're a close ally of Diane Abbott. I mean, will you thank Keir Starmer for what he's done for the Labour Party? I mean, it's not the part of the party that you've been aligned with.
But look, I served in a shadow cabinet with Keir Starmer, and by the way, Jonathan Ashworth, who I'm sorry to see, really sorry to see go, a very talented communicator for the party. So, I don't consider myself a factional person, really. I mean, I'm sorry to see Robert Buckland go, actually, because I have respect for people like Robert Buckland, who I consider to be rule of law, one nation conservatives. And I think that his very passionate speech, his warning to his own party, was one of the important moments of last night. And in the battle for the soul of the Conservative Party, which is coming very soon, I hope that it's people more like Robert Buckland who succeed.
Do you think the whip should be restored to Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, I suspect that ship has sailed, not least because when you've run as an independent, you have run against a Labour candidate, and so it's really a different. It's really a different environment now. And I heard Sadiq Khan say earlier this morning, well, he's been rewarded as a local MP who served his constituents for 40 odd years. So I don't think that is the main issue today. However, I think underneath your question is a point about unifying
exactly that.
The country, as we've heard from the new Prime Minister. But I think that also means the Labour movement as part of the country as a whole.
And Diane Abbott won her seat. There was obviously one of those great controversies that blew up at the start of this campaign. I don't think you've had a chance to talk to her, but just
not yet this morning. But yeah, that was not a great week. It was a week. It wasn't the best week of the Labour campaign. Mercifully, it was early on. It was resolved with Diane having her whip restored, choosing to stand, and then we were able to move on. And I hope lessons will have been learnt in an otherwise pretty well-disciplined campaign.
Thank you for the moment for that. Paul Novak, I mean, the challenges are going to come thick and fast for this incoming Prime Minister, not least on pay, not least on all sorts of questions over workers' rights, which some parts of the union movement were not comfortable with. What are your thoughts at this? I mean, let's face it, this is, we mustn't lose sight of what an astonishing achievement this is, but those challenges are going to come quickly.
Well, it is an astonishing achievement, and casting your mind back to 2019, the idea that Labour could form a government with a 170-seat odd majority, I think would have felt for the birds back in 2019, but that's the majority Keir's got. He's going to face some huge challenges because he's inheriting an absolute mess from the Conservatives, an economic mess. Our economy is effectively stagnant. Wages are no higher now than they were back in 2008, and our public services have been decimated. So no doubt, amidst all the excitement and the euphoria, Keir and his cabinet are going to wake up tomorrow morning with a huge list of challenges. I think the whole country wants to get behind the new government. Certainly the trade union movement wants to get behind the government, and let's get moving on some of these big issues, whether it's getting our economy growing again, getting wages growing again, giving people secure, decent work, fixing our public services. I mean, the list goes on. But, you know, we got a hell of a good starting point, I think, for tackling those issues.
But, I mean, you've already said that, you know, there's no time to lose. Any party which wins the election will have to settle public sector pay this coming year. I mean...
Yeah, well that's a reality. And I hope what will happen, I think we'll see a very different approach from Labour. I mean, we've got a huge staffing crisis in our public services, 300,000 staff vacancies in the NHS.
Even though they've underlined time and again in this campaign that there just isn't the wiggle room in the finances.
Well, every government has to think about issues around public sector pay, and I expect Labour. I would hope that they'll publish the independent the pay review body reports as soon as they're available, and I think that they'll use those as a positive starting point for the discussions and negotiations with our unions. We need to fix our public services, and you've got to put staff at the heart of that. So it's going to be a long, hard road, but it's a road that I'm confident Labour's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and as Baroness Chakrabarti pointed to, the loss of Jonathan Ashworth, who was the shadow paymaster general. I mean, that's an immediate pressing problem, isn't it? That was the man that, had he been given that job in cabinet, would have been looking at all these issues, and suddenly there's this immediate dilemma.
Absolutely, and Jonathan's going to be a real miss for the cabinet. But you know, we've got to get those issues resolved, and then we've got to get onto a much broader, more positive agenda as well. I mean, you mentioned Labour's New Deal for work, whether it's banning zero-hours contracts, ending fire and rehire, giving people day-one employment rights. I mean, these were policies actually that were popular with Conservative voters or Conservative voters in 2019, and I think are part of the reason why Labour have won that majority.
You were nodding along with some of that.
Yes, because to me, this is the hope. And this is how you take on the kind of Farageist politics that we were talking about earlier, by giving people real hope and change in their lives. That's making work pay. That's restoring public services. Now, obviously, there's a mountain to climb in terms of delivering on all of that. And, you know, nothing can happen overnight, but there is a mountain of expectation that now goes with this thumping majority. And so I know that that Keir Starmer and other colleagues will know there isn't much time to celebrate before delivering.
We will see this extraordinary influx of new MPs. I think I was reading just before I came on air that the highest number of female MPs ever in this Parliament. And there are little moments that we should just, you know, we should stop and think about that and think about what that means. And that tied along with the fact we will have an incoming first ever female Chancellor is a significant point, isn't it?
It's a very, very positive step for women, and I think that the Labour movement can be proud of having, over the years, pioneered things like all-women shortlists that went in operation this time but paved the way for this kind of change. Also, in terms of other minority, well, women are not a minority, of course, they're an approximate majority, but in terms of other diversity, it's a diverse group in Parliament and something to be proud of.
And I think some great working class women and people who bring that experience from the shop floor right into Parliament, which is what we need.
Including Angela Rayner.
Well, we should absolutely. I mean, alongside Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner, this extraordinary figure within the Labour movement.
Absolutely, and someone who has been that champion for the New Deal for workers. And you know, I talked to a group of workers on strike just earlier this week in Birkenhead on a picket line, outsourced security guards on the minimum wage. For those workers, a Labour couldn't come soon enough. And I think that New Deal will make a tangible difference to their working lives. And that's the thing that gives people hope. Not just the promises during an election campaign, but seeing that New Deal. Labour have said an employment bill within the first 100 days of a Labour government. I think that would send a really positive, strong message that Labour is serious about change.
And you're on their case?
Yeah, well, and absolutely, because they're ambitious for working people, and I'm really ambitious for working people. And frankly, it's not only good for the people we represent, it's good for the UK economy as well.
Thank you, Paul Novak and Baroness Shamit Chakrabarti. Thank you very much indeed for that. We're just keeping an eye on Downing Street. Quite a lot of umbrellas lining up there. It looks as though, I'm presuming, Libby, if you can hear me, that these are perhaps party workers, party supporters who are being permitted into Downing Street, but that's just my guess, having remembered some of those images from '97, a very different scene, of course. What can you tell us about what's happening?
Yes, well, as you say, there are Labour Party officials beginning to arrive here, and they are carrying umbrellas. Noticeably, some of them with umbrellas that are Union Jacks. And I think that is an indication as to how Keir Starmer wants to start his premiership, making a very bold statement that he will be a patriotic Prime Minister. It's very much how he portrayed himself in opposition as someone who put country first rather than party. And I think these umbrellas, which I have to say I didn't expect to see them appearing like this, I think that's an indication of his direction of travel.
Yes, it is quite a scene, isn't it? We're keeping also a little bit of an eye on the rainy scene outside Buckingham Palace. Just looking at my watch, we're a few moments away from Sir Keir Starmer arriving. It's not clear at all to us from where Keir Starmer will be travelling to reach that spot. Let's just then return to our images on Downing Street as officials, party workers are being permitted alongside the press on the opposite side. I mean, it's going to be a bit busy in there, isn't it? And I actually, you know, we quite often, don't we, when we see departing prime ministers and their families, or those moments where, you know, there's changeovers, that we do see those permitted to line up. But it's very clear that the Labour Party have wanted to make sure, come rain or shine, that there are those there to greet the incoming Prime Minister. Shami Chakrabarti is still alongside me in the studio. Daniel Hewitt's been here with me all morning. And I suppose for very many of us of a certain age, Shami, you know, we do recall those moments in '97 very clearly. I mean, this couldn't be a more difficult or different backdrop in many ways. What do you think when you see these images?
Well, as I sort of intimated earlier, well, apart from anything else, I don't remember being so tired in 1997. But I think
maybe a reason for that.
There may be a reason for that, Julie. In fact, I was an official in the Home Office in 1997, and I remember the sense of excitement even within Whitehall. Now, of course, civil servants are not partisan, but they're still human. I think that it's very different from 1997, not least because of what's happening in the wider world. We haven't touched on this yet, but one of the big issues in the in-tray, and of course it emerges as soon as the new Prime Minister walks into number 10, are these phone calls from foreign leaders. There's the famous kind of nuclear letters and so on and so forth. But the world is in such a perilous position at the moment. We've got close allies in Europe and in the United States in their own political turmoil. So, yes, very different from 97, very difficult economically, very difficult in terms of international security and threats to the rules-based order that I noticed Volodymyr Zelensky referred to in his prompt message to Prime Minister Starmer.
Yes, it was the quickest one to arrive this morning, notable. Given that it's you we have here to chat to, Baroness Chakrabarti, it is quite something, and many will have different views on this, of course, that after all of the energy and noise we heard around that Rwanda bill, against which you spoke out so regularly and so vociferously, it is quite something to think that is now simply, that's gone now, that's gone. And there'll be very many that will welcome that. There'll be very many others that pose an enormous question about what happens next then, because it's one of those areas that in the debates, in the interviews that have Keir Starmer's done in these last few weeks, he was pressed on pretty hard, and some were not at all satisfied with the alternatives that he was suggesting.
Well, when you're offering a very expensive and legislative gimmick, a quick fix, any alternative message is much harder to deliver. But I think the alternative involves a lot of hard work and sound administration, which is not sexy politics, but actually it's the sort of thing that Keir Starmer in his own working life, pre-political life, is quite suited to because of his time working with the police in Northern Ireland, because of his time as DPP. We've got to have better relations with our European partners so that where appropriate people can be returned. But we've got to sort out administration and casework in the Home Office. The backlog, the infamous backlog. And so what we've seen is actually what Robert Buckland referred to last night as performative politics, the gimmicks, the crueler and crueler discourse, as opposed to just improving administration. There is a casework backlog that must be dealt with in the Home Office. It's not about reneging on international treaties. It's about doing your administration and doing it well. It's not sexy, but when it's better, as it was even under the last Labour government, it makes a big difference.
Well, it might not be sexy, but then equally, we know that so much of... There's a lovely shot there of, I'm not quite sure whose family that is, that's been allowed up Downing Street to stand awaiting the crowds, but a new generation, as somebody in my ear is observing, and actually, it's a rather charming image, that, isn't it? When we think about the responsibility of office, that little girl will have no idea, perhaps, why she's running up Downing Street in the rain, but she will be talking about that, let's hope, to her family for generations to come, to say, well, somebody took me into Downing Street when there was this Labour landslide. But it does sort of, I don't know, as a mum, that sort of makes me sort of skip a beat a bit, because you just suddenly realise it's that child's future and all of those young people watching. It is now in their hands. You're a father of a very gorgeous little boy, Dan. I don't want to turn this chat sound like a sort of Mothers' Union chat, but
yeah.
But it does sort of get you, doesn't it?
I woke up. I mean, a 9-month-old boy at home. I did wake up this morning before I left home and thought, yeah, this is a moment for you in your life. This is your future. I think Keir Starmer has talked, hasn't he, about his two children and how he wants to protect them and provide them with as much privacy as he can. And the one thing he has said, because his children are a little bit older, he has said if they were 5 years old or younger, in a way this whole upheaval their life is about to undertake, it would be a bit easier. That little girl, it's just a fun day out for that little girl, isn't it? Whereas his children being a bit older, they're aware of what their dad's about to do. They're aware of the attention he's about to get. But yeah, we've talked a lot about 97, haven't we? And that was one of the striking images of 97 was Tony Blair with his incredibly young
these are huge landmarks. General elections in general, and particularly ones of change, are enormous moments, not just in the lives of activists, politicians and journalists, but in the lives of I can remember being 10 years old in 1979 and what a big right? We're the same age. What a big general election that was. That was the first woman prime minister and memorable for that, though controversial in many ways. And yes, it's important to remember who this is all for.
Indeed, somebody's very cleverly picked that little shot up for us just as we were contemplating it. I mean, actually, to this point about whether one gets to see the children of prime ministers, I mean, that was a big memory from 97, the whole family on show, and that was before Leo Blair had arrived. I mean, it was notable today that the outgoing Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, the two daughters weren't, we have seen them in the past, of course. We didn't see them today. Gordon Brown, of course, when he left Downing Street, we've got that charming image of him and Sarah and their two boys. But I think maybe because of the pressure on families, the privacy, let's face it, the dangers around politics, things have shifted right the other way again, haven't they? Yeah,
and I don't like the reasons for it. I don't like the dangers, but I don't think it's a bad thing that it's no longer expected for wives and children to be trotted out like props in political theatre. I think that's it. And by the way, I really respect Keir Starmer for saying he wants to save where he can a bit of family time on a Friday evening, and the responses to that from the Conservative campaign were not their best bits.
OK, thank you very much, Baroness Chakrabarti. Daniel will stay here. We are on this image of the arch into the central quadrangle of Buckingham Palace because we are expecting fairly soon, I would say, that we might get the first glimpse of the new Prime Minister as he arrives in Downing Street. I'm intrigued by our camera picking up a car on another screen that I can see and you can't at the moment. Chris Shipp is there. What can you see, Chris?
With my eyes, Julie, I think we've just seen the incoming Prime Minister. Remember, not Prime Minister yet because he hasn't had his audience with the King. He's just driven past us, gone through the North Centre Gate, which is that one on the right-hand side here, and then he'll go into the quadrangle of Buckingham Palace, effectively taking exactly the same route that Rishi Sunak did about an hour or so ago into the quadrangle. He'll be met at the King's door by the King's Principal Private Secretary, Sir Clive Alderton. I can't see the pictures at the moment, Julie. It's all happening behind that palace wall behind me, but I think I can hear in my ear the crunch of the gravel under the cars, and that means Keir Starmer is about to go and meet the King in the private audience room, and that's where he will be invited to form a new government.
So the door of the Range Rover opens and Sir Keir Starmer emerges. Our first glimpse on this day one of his administration, being welcomed by the King's Private Secretary, Lady Victoria Starmer, alongside him, welcomed in to go to see the Queen, to see the King, forgive me, to see the King, to be invited to form a new government. And what a moment indeed that must be as he contemplates what lies ahead, as he ascends those steps, and we'll come away from that shot for the moment. And Chris Shipp, it is a moment of history, that, and what happens behind those doors and behind the facade of Buckingham Palace is quite something.
Yes, it is, and it is a very sombre moment, and I'm sure the enormity of this moment is dawning on Sir Keir Starmer right now. As we speak, he's not currently Prime Minister. That power is resting with the King presently, but the King will ask Sir Keir Starmer to to see if he can establish a working government. And in other words, do you have a majority in the House of Commons and can form a new government? Well, we had that answer last night. Yes, he certainly can. And that is a very big moment for him. And then he's got that drive back from here, probably around about 5 minutes, perhaps a little bit less, to Downing Street, when he will be chewing over those final script of his speech that he will deliver in Downing Street. A very important moment, because we always go back to those arrival speeches, don't we? We still talk about the one that Margaret Thatcher gave in 1979. So that is a big moment for him, and this will be here too. Remember, this is the King's third Prime Minister of his relatively short reign so far. His mother had 15 Prime Ministers, Winston Churchill being her very first one, but this King, King Charles III, is already on his third Prime Minister.
Worth noting too, Chris, that of course when Sir Keir Starmer was knighted for the work that he had done leading the Crown Prosecution Service, it was the King, as he was as Prince of Wales, as somebody wipes the lens of our camera, it's all happening. It was this King who knighted this incoming Prime Minister.
That's just right, and don't forget, this isn't the first time that that Keir Starmer has met the King as leader of the opposition. He has fairly regular audiences with him in any case, but now he is Prime Minister. This isn't really a traditional weekly audience. This is the moment when he's asked to become Prime Minister, but his first regular audience will happen next Wednesday, and that'll be one of the regular weekly audiences that they have, just the two of them in the room, and no one gets to find out what they talk about.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Chris. So Keir Starmer meeting the King in Buckingham Palace. We're going to take a short break. Do stay with us. We'll see you again in a moment.
Each time you blink, think of Ruqaiya. Because for this little girl, each blink is torture. An infection called trachoma has turned her lashes inwards. Now, each blink feels like thorns scratching her eyes. Each time you blink, think of Manaru, because every blink makes his world darker, makes it harder to read, write, or even go to school. He's in so much pain, and he desperately needs help. Just imagine what it's like for a child when each blink is agony, to lose your sight and face darkness and pain. Please, will you do something amazing to help them? Just call 0800 038 4928 and give £2 a month to Sightsavers. When you do, you'll help children in remote regions get the medicines, surgery and care that can cure trachoma. You'll be giving them back their sight, their childhoods, their joy, their futures. But please don't wait. Call Sightsavers now on 0800 038 4928 or text BLINK1 to 78866 and give just £2 a month. Because each blink is torture for children like Ruqaiya. They need you to help save them from a life of blindness and pain.
I managed to get the last room for £140.
I booked the last room a week ago.
I booked yesterday. Some sites panic you into booking their last room, but they don't have all the availability. Instead, use Trivago. Trivago compares hotel prices from hundreds of sites, so you can land a great deal. Hotel Trivago.
Huh? Oh. Thousands of top UK brands pay us when you shop. And we share that cash with you. So, thinking of shopping online? Top cash back.
Coming up, we've got even more laughs in entertainment. This one? Oh, stop it, you. Join Scott Pulse to complete short surveys, have your say, and win cash prizes.
Don't just imagine that ultimate summer holiday feeling. Find it with Largo Leisure Holidays and discover the perfect Scottish getaway at one of our 6 award-winning self-catering holiday parks across Scotland, with stunning locations and luxurious accommodation to suit everyone and every budget. From glamping to lodges, cabins to houses and much more, this is where memories begin. Book your summer break today. We're waiting for you, and get the ultimate summer holiday feeling with Largo Leisure Holidays.
At Ninja Warrior UK Edinburgh, you grip, you leap, you reach, you laugh. Can you beat the wall? Find your inner ninja at Ninja Warrior UK Edinburgh. Book online at ninjawarrior.uk.
Welcome back to ITV News' continuing coverage of the UK election and the appointment of a new Prime Minister. We are still looking at the outside of Buckingham Palace because just a few moments ago we saw the Range Rover pull up in the central courtyard of Buckingham Palace. The Range Rover carrying Sir Keir Starmer and his wife Victoria. Waiting there to greet them was Sir Clive Alderton, the King's private secretary. Sir Keir Starmer had the opportunity to speak to him relatively recently because the palace had rather smartly positioned Sir Keir Starmer to sit next to him at a recent banquet just a couple of weeks ago. So they are well acquainted already. But this is the moment, just a few minutes ago, that we saw Sir Keir Starmer arrive to go for his meeting with King Charles III. Welcome for Victoria Starmer, who must be contemplating quite a different life ahead, though she's committed to staying in her role, working in occupational health in the NHS. We're also keeping a close eye in the other key location today, of course, and that is number 10 Downing Street. The Brollies were up recently there because of a light showers there. Can't quite see Downing Street for the moment, so we can talk to Chris Shipp, who's watching everything coming and going at the palace. And this is where it's all at for this last hour or so, this transfer of power. We may get a photograph at some point, we presume, of Sir Keir Starmer with the King, Chris, but it is quite a thing to witness.
Yes, we will get that photograph, which is the first official meeting between the King and his new Prime Minister. That will come out quite imminently, and we'll keep a close eye on that for you. As you say, everything at the moment is focused on here and the private meeting that is going on there. And as you were just talking about, Julie, there was, when we went into Buckingham Palace a few weeks ago, when the state visit of Japan was happening, we were struck by the fact that when we saw the table plans before everyone came in their finery to have that banquet, that Sir Keir Starmer was sitting right next to Sir Clive Alderton, the King's principal private secretary. And we were wondering, well, are these two men going to meet in a couple of weeks' time? And so they did this morning when Sir Clive welcomed the leader of the Labour Party in the quadrangle of Buckingham Palace there. So yes, they have been acquainted. They had a long chat at that state banquet, of course. But, you know, the moment now is not about the advisors. The moment is about the King and his new Prime Minister. He will ask Sir Keir Starmer if he can form a new government, and he will reply yes. He will take the commission, if you like, to form a new government. And this thing about kissing of hands, a lot of people ask me, do they actually kiss the hands of the monarch? Well, they used to. They don't do that anymore, but it's always recorded in the court circular, which will either go up later this afternoon. Just keeping an eye on that police car going past me, but it looks like there's nothing to do with it. Recorded later this afternoon or tomorrow that the Prime Minister kissed hands on appointment. It just means that that type of meeting was the one where he became the Prime Minister. And we were just saying the third Prime Minister of King Charles's reign. That's all happening behind me at the moment. Sadly for the crowds that have come here, a lot of them come here at this time for changing the guard. Didn't happen today, and all they've got is a couple of car movements going in and out. You could say that's quite historically significant, but if you came here for changing the guard, well, your pictures aren't going to look as good as they might have done otherwise.
OK, Chris, for the moment, thank you very much. You are our eyes and ears down there, so we will be back to you pronto if there's any significant development. Let's take you, for the moment, though, back to Downing Street, which we've seen filling up with a few crowds there, and it looks like the sunshine's coming out, Libby. Just take us through what you can see.
Yes, Sir Keir Starmer in his victory speech did say that he was offering people the sunshine of hope, and appropriately, perhaps, or luckily for him, the sun has just come out. We're expecting him here in Downing Street imminently with his wife Victoria, and members of the extended Labour family are already here. There are some very young relatives of Labour grandees who are gathered outside number 11. You've probably seen some pictures of them earlier. And then along the street from me, you can see a lot of people who have been instrumental in getting this far. I mean, it's an astonishing thing to reflect on that 3 years ago, Keir Starmer actually considered throwing in the towel after that loss of Hartlepool in the Hartlepool by-election. Following that, there was another by-election in Batley and Spen in West Yorkshire, which the Labour Party held on to with just 323 votes. I think if they hadn't won that seat, there is a real possibility that Keir Starmer would have stood down, and yet here he is 3 years later on the threshold of power. We're expecting him imminently, as I said, here in Downing Street. He will obviously be saying a few words before he goes in, but he's made quite a lot already of the fact that he wants to roll up his sleeves and get on with the business of governing, and no wonder, given how long Labour has been out of power, 14 years, and of course it's 19 years since they last won an election, so it is an extraordinary day for the Labour Party, and they seem to be enjoying every moment of it.
Daniel Hewitt is still alongside me in the studio. I mean, this is a moment of anticipation, especially for those party officials, friends, family of Keir Starmer waiting there in Downing Street. What are you thinking about ahead of the remarks that he's about to make?
I think he should enjoy this moment because it's going to get pretty serious pretty quickly for Keir Starmer. We've talked throughout the morning about the challenges ahead and long-term challenges for the country, but in the short term there are some really key things he needs to do quite quickly. The doctor strikes is going to be first on his agenda. I know we presume the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, will also be speaking to the British Dental Association. Dentistry is a big issue, which the Labour said it wants to get on pretty quickly. We've got overcrowding in prisons. The issue of funding for local authorities is right at the top of the agenda. The Thames Water, universities, these are not things that they can wait around on. They're going to have to get onto these issues pretty quickly. And we talked briefly earlier about Rwanda. It's going to be a pretty awkward call to Kigali as well, because that scheme will be scrapped pretty quickly, as well as the calls to, we presume, the White House and to other members in European countries. That's going to be a pretty awkward call for Downing Street to have to make. They will make it. But I think this is clearly personally for him an amazing moment as a human being. This is going to be a moment he never forgets, but I think once that door closes, he appoints his cabinet, it's down to work. There's a lot of work to do.
There's a lot of work to do, not least in re-engaging with the idea of trust with the public.
Absolutely. And when
trying to match some of the apathy and anger. I mean, you've been out, reporting so comprehensively on so many of the big policy areas. Yeah. You and Paul Brand have been, listening really closely to how people are feeling. And, frankly, as Paul was reporting a couple of days ago, if there'd been an anger and apathy party, they'd have done pretty well.
And if you look at, we call this a landslide, but if you look at because of our voting system, Labour have received around a third of the vote, and that's been interpreted as 2/3 of seats in Parliament. There is also a question here about electoral reform. Now, I know in '97, when Labour came into power, Tony Blair was offering a commission, the Jenkins Commission, looking into electoral reform. It was quietly shelved. Can Labour afford to do that? There's going to be talk here and calls here for another look at the electoral system. Because I travelled the country and I didn't get a sense there was much love for this Labour Party and much love for Keir Starmer. This feels like the kick the Tories out election, which, when you talk about lending votes, Boris Johnson talked about lending votes in 2019. He said that people have lent their votes to us and we have to earn them. They didn't. They gave them straight back to Labour across the Red Wall and across the country. So trust is a massive issue. I think electoral reform will come up. I think the Labour Party will try and kill it as quick as they can. Because
with the majority like this, they surely will, won't they?
They can. But there is going to be an election in 4 or 5 years' time, and can they go to the country with a record of improving this country? Because if they don't, we see how volatile the electorate is. Is there a safe seat left in this country? Is there any loyalty towards these two parties? I don't think there is. And so if Labour don't perform, if they don't tackle the issues that people really care about, cost of living, NHS and others, this could be quite a short-lived premiership. And that's a mad thing to say when we're talking about an enormous majority. But there is no guarantees left in politics. It feels like it's on fast forward at the moment.
I have to agree with that rather brilliant analysis, actually. Yes, there's nothing to be taken for granted. If I look back at the things people were saying about the Johnson reign that began in 2019, and we were told it would be 20 years, etc., etc., I think what has happened subsequently certainly backs up your theory that people no longer, as they did when we were young, perhaps when we were children, vote from across the generations for their party. Much more volatile, as is the economy, as is the world around them. And I think, in addition to delivering and making people's lives better in the bread and butter ways of NHS, housing, cost of living crisis and so on, I think there needs to be a change of tone, because I think one of the things that I have been hearing from people who are not politicos time and again is it's one rule for them and it's another rule for us, and that is a refrain that refers to arrogance, that refers to corruption, that refers to so many things. And so when you are attempting to deliver, you need to be careful about how you speak to people as well. Don't overpromise, don't demonise your opponents even. There's a lot that we can learn from the last few years.
Let's just interrupt you there. Here is our first image then, just within the last few moments. The first image of Sir Keir Starmer meeting King Charles III. He has been invited to form a government. That is a image which will go down in history as we await to see the images of him emerging from this meeting. We'd seen the pictures of Sir Keir and Lady Victoria Starmer arriving a few moments ago. Chris Shipp, I think, can talk us through this image. We come to expect these, but they are still quite a thing when we spot them.
Yes, I was just looking at it as you were, Julie, and yes, that is a moment in history. This is the private audience room inside Buckingham Palace, and you will remember quite how these kind of pictures can go down in history. If you remember the one, of course, of Liz Truss meeting the late Queen just 2 days before she died. So that is a very significant moment. It means that we do now have a new Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer is the third Prime Minister of King Charles's reign. I'm just checking my feed to see if we've had anything yet from Buckingham Palace to confirm that. We haven't, but that photograph is pretty much it. That means that Keir Starmer has become Prime Minister, and shortly we will expect to see him leave now in the Prime Ministerial car with a police escort, which I noted he didn't have on the way in as he makes his way back to Downing Street. It's actually quite sunny here at the moment, Julie, but I've just been checking the Met Office weather radar app, and if I were advising Keir Starmer, I'd say to get the speech done before 1 or 1:15, because otherwise he risks having another Rishi Sunak moment in Downing Street. But the weather's certainly on and off. At the moment it's on, and me and all the other people here are dry, but don't expect that to last.
OK, never we look so eagerly at the weather when we're looking at those Downing Street shots. They seem to have punctuated these last 10 years or so, don't they? But we will just keep that image on the screen at the moment. Daniel's alongside me, and of all those little moments, you know, when we went on air with the, the exit poll last night, some of those key punctuation points during the night, Liz Truss losing her seat, Jacob Rees-Mogg, those moments where you saw that Nigel Farage, 8th time of asking, got his seat in Parliament. That is one of the other images that will define what we've seen in terms of history unfolding.
Yeah, it's the image I think everyone would have expected to see throughout this campaign. I mean, no one, even inside the Conservative Party, no one expected Rishi Sunak to be the man shaking King Charles's hand today. But for Keir Starmer, it is quite a moment, and for the country, it is quite a moment. As we've said on this programme, these moments don't happen very often. This is the fourth kind of changing of the political guard in almost half a century. This is a Prime Minister, the seventh Labour Prime Minister in history, by the way, and to To give you a little stat, we've had 7 Tory Prime Ministers since 1990. So Labour Prime Ministers don't come around very often. So when they get the chance to meet the King and shake his hand, they'll take it.
We'll then keep an eye on the camera position to the left of that screen because we're not expecting, Chris, are we, that this is a meeting that necessarily takes very long. But that's, you know, one of the features of how quickly power is transferred. And once Sir Keir Starmer emerges along those steps and into the waiting now prime ministerial vehicle, what a journey it will be indeed for him.
Yeah, a journey to take a lot in. I don't know how much sleep Sir Keir Starmer has given himself overnight. We saw him at various stages, firstly at his count and then that other speech he made in central London, and now meeting the King at around about midday. Whatever sleep he's had, he's going to need all the energy and sophistication he's got in order to deliver what will become a very significant speech and a moment of history. As you were just saying, Labour Prime Ministers don't come round very often, and you know, this is a significant moment, a significant landslide for him, and I think he'll be reflecting on that campaign, yes, but also the big job that's ahead of him and all the things that we didn't get to talk about in the campaign, and all the questions that were perhaps slightly swerved by various political leaders. The big task of government begins now, and it's only when you've accepted that commission from the King and you've driven back to Downing Street, you make the speech, and then you go in through that famous black door. The enormity of that moment will really dawn on Sir Keir Starmer, that this is it, the talking's over, the doing begins. And I was struck by how Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister of Scotland, was talking about that very thing last night. You know, you've blamed everyone else for everything that's gone wrong. Now it's all your responsibility, and that's a lot to take in on that very short drive between here at Buckingham Palace and Downing Street.
Indeed, Libby Vina is at Downing Street with the crowd awaiting the new Prime Minister there. Libby, I'm hoping that you can hear me. It'll be it's quite a balancing act for Sir Keir Starmer, this first speech as new Prime Minister, given this, you know, pretty disheartening campaign in many people's eyes that we've witnessed, and given, you know, what this country's been through in the last few years.
Yes, I mean, I think it's pretty extraordinary that we are now seeing Sir Keir Starmer about to walk in to number 10. He's a very, very enigmatic politician, came to politics late, in fact, having been a prominent barrister and director of public prosecutions. Incidentally, he had, of course, had a formal meeting with the now King when he was Prince Charles, when Keir Starmer received his knighthood 10 years ago. But I think that nevertheless it will be a huge, huge moment for him and for the country. The fact is that this is an incredible endorsement of Labour without people actually knowing a huge amount about what the party now stands for. They know that Keir Starmer has done a lot to change the party since that defeat in 2019. He actually withdrew the whip from the former leader, Jeremy Corbyn, which I think many people see as an indication of just how ruthless Keir Starmer can be when he wants to be, and perhaps a clue as to why he has got here so quickly. Nevertheless, he will have a job to bring Labour together to ensure that he can govern in the way that he wants to. He clearly has moved his party a long way to the centre, but I think ideology is less at the forefront of his mind at the moment than the country's real-world problems, and those countries include a huge level of debt, the fact that prices are still rising, there is still a cost of living crisis, there is a war in Europe, the war in Ukraine. There are many, many problems that he will face when he walks through that door, and as I say, he has made a big thing of wanting to roll up his sleeves and just get on with it.
Thank you, Libby. Stay there for us at the moment. We will just keep our camera on this image because we just want to catch that first glimpse of Sir Keir Starmer when he emerges. Alongside me, still in the studio, is Baroness Shami Chakrabarti, joined by Baroness Helena Kennedy Casey, Labour peer, of course, and colleague long-standing of Sir Keir Starmer when he was a young barrister too. Helena Kennedy, welcome to you. I mean, you know him personally. Lovely to see you here.
It's lovely to see you today.
I mean, you know him in ways because of that early professional contact that you had with him. You saw him growing into that role as a barrister. I mean, it's quite astonishing, I suppose, through your eyes to be contemplating these images.
Yes, our chambers is called Doughty Street Chambers, and so we're now sort of saying from Doughty Street to Downing Street is an incredible journey. And he was a very bright young pupil barrister. Pupil barristers are the people who are in training. And he came to us as a pupil. In fact, before we set up Doughty Street Chambers, we were all in Dr. Johnson's buildings with John Mortimer, the famous writer of Rumpole.
And sorry, thank you, Helena. We can see these images then. A shake of the hand and a kiss on the cheek for Sir... shaking the hand for Keir Starmer and Lady Victoria. And we will stay with these images. The Prime Ministerial vehicle now about to leave the hushed confines of the inside of Buckingham Palace. And the new Prime Minister is on his way, crunching across that red gravel, about to emerge to the eyes of those who've gathered around the gates of Downing Street. A few of those have gathered, knowing that this is a highly significant moment. A new Labour Prime Minister, a landslide, a huge majority, which gives him the potential to make some change. That was his slogan throughout this campaign. There are those now waiting with bated breath to see, with some of those outlines that he gave the United Kingdom, whether he can actually deliver. So we have those images now from the helicopter, the clouds having cleared a little, enough to be able to get these shots. Chris Shipp will be getting a good view of this now. But it is only a short journey between Buckingham Palace, of course, about to pass the Queen Victoria Memorial and along the Mall. The sight approaching him, Admiralty Arch, away from the palace. And what conversations or thoughts will be being had in the rear seats of the now Prime Ministerial vehicle. When I spoke to Sir Keir Starmer when he arrived for that first debate, which feels like a million years ago, first thing he said was, I've waited 4.5 years for this. Well, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where that becomes a reality. As he takes that traditional route, the police escort alongside him, his wife knowing that at this point everything changes, security changes, family life changes. The prospect of maybe just having those moments of relaxation, though he's said that he's going to try to preserve those family moments, suddenly become a bit trickier. His diary will be crowded. There will be civil servants waiting at every turn to advise him on all he needs to know. This is the point where the bonnet lid gets lifted, whether it's the nation's finances, whether it's the nation's security, whether it's those things that only a Prime Minister and his inner circle need to know in terms of the security of this nation. It is quite an extraordinary thing to contemplate. Within the coming days, once he's made his speech, he has a NATO summit, he has a gathering of European political leaders at Blenheim Palace. This afternoon, he'll be appointing that new cabinet. We will have our first female chancellor. The work of government will begin. Those outlines that he provided during the whole of that campaign now have to be filled in real, in prose, as the saying goes. And as we see the Prime Ministerial car make its way towards the gates of Downing Street, I know that the crowds there will be anticipating this moment after a very long night. There'll be a lot of people with no sleep, including very possibly those travelling in that car. And as we see the car make its approach, we will be hearing very soon from our correspondent, Libby Vina, who is just watching some of these images with us, and it looks as though he is entering through, perhaps walking through. I'm trying to get my geography right here. We're not quite sure where has he arrived.
Isn't this the back entrance to Downing Street?
Back entrance to Downing Street, perhaps? Well, we don't think that is.
No? What do you think? I think, isn't that...
Well, I presume he's about to be greeted by the Cabinet Secretary. We can see, very grateful to Victoria Starmer for wearing a red dress, because we can spot her from the helicopter. But we're just waiting to see whether they are now taking a few moments to gather their thoughts. There we can see Horse Guards in the centre of shot there. Libby Vino, that's not the arrival we were expecting of the new Prime Minister. Perhaps you can take us through it.
We aren't clear where Sir Keir Starmer is going to come into Downing Street. I don't think he's going to be walking up the street from Whitehall as Tony and Cherie Blair did back in 1997. I think it's going to be a different sort of entrance, possibly coming from the Foreign Office, which is just opposite
yeah, that's what
10.
We're hearing, Libby. That's what we're hearing.
Possibly that way. I think it'll be, he will be greeted by much cheering and enthusiasm from all the Labour Party workers and family and friends who are gathered here. But I think that he is keen to present a very low-key image, perhaps not the kind of celebratory themes we saw back in 1997. I think there is a very different atmosphere. The country's in a very different place. The economy is still in deep trouble, and I think he wants to present himself as a serious man for serious times. So I think while there will be huge jubilation when he actually arrives, I think he will not be trying to emulate what Tony Blair did in 1997, when there was a truly carnival-like atmosphere. I think it is going to be a bit more subdued, but we'll find out fairly soon.
It was interesting. We did actually see the shots of him being greeted on arrival, and it is that moment when the civil service sort of purrs into action to orchestrate, help him orchestrate these coming moments, but make sure that things move along safely, securely, and allow him to get on with the work of government.
Yes, but of course, having been Director of Public Prosecutions, he does know how government works, because in that role he had weekly meetings with civil servants. So he was present at many of the committees where decisions were made, where instructions from the government of the day were discussed. So I think in that way, although he's not a very experienced politician, he does know about the workings of government. And of course, he has also worked abroad a lot in that role as a senior barrister prior to being DPP, defending people who were on death row in various countries in the Caribbean, in Africa. He knows perhaps a lot more than many previous leaders of the opposition have known before they took over the reins of power. So I think he has experience which is relevant, but as everyone says, nothing can really prepare you for taking on this huge role where you have to be across everything 24/7.
Thank you, Libby. I know you'll keep your eyes peeled and let us know what's happening in Downing Street. Just to return to Baroness Helena Kennedy, we were, you perhaps couldn't hear what Libby was saying there, but she was outlining the role that clearly when he was DPP had, dealings with the civil service every day. But that transition from being a barrister to DPP and then into politics, it has been an I hate to use the word, that extraordinary journey, but there is a gear change. There have been questions about whether he was actually ready for that blast of hard politics. Just chart that a bit for us.
Well, funnily enough, I was the other day talking to Dominic Grieve, who was the Attorney General when Keir was the Director of Public Prosecutions, and he said there would be weekly meetings of the permanent secretaries of all the different departments, and Keir would be there as one of those, as a senior civil servant. So he really understands the machinery of government rather well. And Dominic Greaves, who is a Conservative and was a Conservative Attorney General, his view was that he was very respected, was on top of his brief, and really was learning fast how things work. This is somebody who's got a very capacious brain. He's a very clever man, and I think that to be a prime minister you really do need to be clever, and big mistakes are made when people are not clever enough, and I think he is very clever, and I think that he is going to be on top of this fairly quickly. He was not political in the way that many who have been parliamentarians for many, many years before they become a leader of a party.
I mean, it's just as a footnote, I mean, he only became an MP in 2015.
That's right. But then at the same time, he had the experience of running the equivalence of a big government department in the way that a minister, a Secretary of State might, because that's what, I mean, he was employing, thousands of prosecutors. He was having to deal with matters up and down the whole country relating to law and making the decisions at the high level about, which were fine decisions about what was in the public interest, what wasn't, what was prosecuted and what not. And he was having to interact on often international things too. So he's had a different kind of experience, but I think that may enrich his what he brings to the table as a Prime Minister, because sometimes simply being in Parliament doesn't give you the great experience that people imagine.
I would also put a word in for my former colleagues in the civil service, who have, who take a lot of abuse. They've been called the blob and all these things by certain elements in the Conservative Party. There'll be a lot of goodwill there, and a lot of support and expertise that can be harnessed. And of course, it must be guided by the new political administration with its missions and priorities. But there are people who can be, treated with respect.